Hello everyone, and welcome to my 2024 travel report. This has been a very busy year and I have traveled a lot, so let's get right into it. I will say I asked Mike Wazowski to do the voiceover for this, but he's at the eye doctor, so he got me instead. Of course, my year started off with the 2024 Grand Assembly sessions at the Masonic Care Community. With excitement, I jumped right in. I had my first ever visit at the Amaranth Fights Diabetes Bowling fundraiser. I've never been very good at bowling, and that didn't change there, but surprisingly, I still won. The following weekend, my traveling companions and I drove down to New York City to visit W. Mark Sexton Assembly for their installation. The new worthy advisor Julianne V. and her officers had a beautiful installation. April came and went quickly, and May was officially my first busy month out of many. On the first Friday of the month, we attended the Columbia Duchess Putnam Grand Matron and Grand Patron visit in LaGrange. I was asked to speak and fell into the groove of telling jokes. The next weekend, through torrential rains, we arrived at my first official visit, a banquet for Grand Lodge. While we were there, we met with Samantha A., who got first place in the Taunton Essay Contest, and she read her essay that night. The next weekend was Grand Court of Amaranth and Niagara Falls. Earlier in the day, I traveled to Canada for the first time, and my mom and I included a visit to Niagara Falls. But of course, we got lost before we actually found the falls. That next weekend was my first out-of-state Grand Assembly with other New Yorkers, including our Grand Rep to Maine, Natalie. It was the first time I had ever eaten a red snapper or a red hot dog, which is apparently a very common thing in Maine. To me, it tasted exactly the same as a regular hot dog, but the bright red color was very interesting. On our drive back home, we stopped by the Hudson Valley Assembly open house, where we saw and chatted with two prospective members for Hudson Valley Assembly. That next Sunday was the Fidelity open house, where we had plenty of ice cream and friendship bracelets. The next Friday was one of the year's most anticipated events, Grand Family. The theme was Sprinkle Your Life with Kindness, and it was full of ice cream, and I mean, who doesn't like ice cream? The Dream Team had a fun-filled weekend for all. Then it was another trip to New York City. We were very grateful for Mom Jess for being our New York City chauffeur for an initiation at W. Mark Sexton Assembly. They initiated 3 new girls into our rainbow. A huge welcome to Violet, Evelyn, and Ellen. Later that month, I attended St. John's Day at the Masonic Care Community, which was by far the rainiest event I have ever gone to, and of course, it was outside. The day started off with an informal installation, then followed by a parade out around the campus. Afterwards, Ariel, Natalie, Evelyn, and I sold our goodies for the charity, while it sadly still poured. The next weekend, I attended the New York Council of Deliberations Scottish Rite Masons annual session in Syracuse. And early the next day, we drove to Massachusetts Grand Assembly to attend the rest of their weekend. Hi, Ashley! On July 4th, I joined Middletown Assembly for the Ellenville 4th of July parade. We got aboard the float and rolled through Ellenville in style. We threw lots of candy, and some people may have fallen victim to Zoe and Tabitha's water guns. The next day was New Hampshire's Grand Assembly, and we were fortunately joined by the Grand Rep to New Hampshire, Kaylin, and Mom Val. That next weekend was Rhode Island's Grand Assembly, which I was very excited for because the theme was a fellow Pixar movie. Sully was in very good company. It was tons of fun, and it was so amazing seeing all the Northeast squaws again. That next weekend was the big one, Supreme Assembly, and it was the first Supreme I had ever attended. This year it was in Hampton, Virginia, and it was about a 10-hour car ride, the longest one to date. Our junior past Grand with the advisor, Alyssa, was acting Supreme Love in the memorial service and Supreme Page to Supreme Love. She did an amazing job, and I was so lucky to be there with her. I was in the cavalcade of flags holding the New York State flag. We were joined by so many amazing New York rainbow people, including our sister Cloris, and we got to see the Supreme installation where our mom Gail was installed as Supreme Charity. The very next weekend, after we got back from Supreme, we traveled to the Eastern Star Bazaar in Oriskany. On the first day, we walked around selling labels for people's raffle tickets. The next day, we set up the rainbow table to sell for our state charity. After my first weekend off in a pretty long time, I traveled with the Grand Rep to Canada, Daphne, to their Grand Assembly. Even though we sang "Oh Canada" many times that weekend, I still never learned it. Then my brother and I went to Syracuse for the Triangle State Representative Caitlin's homecoming. I've known Caitlin for pretty much my whole life, so it felt like a full circle moment that I was at her homecoming. But before then, we stopped at Auburn Assembly for their chicken barbecue, and it was delicious. The next weekend was another busy one. Saturday was the Grand Council of Cryptic Masons, where I got to see our very own Dad Dan Elliott be installed as Grand Master of Cryptic Masons in Albany. Later that night, I spoke at the banquet and was given a very beautiful lantern gift from Dad Dan, based on his theme, Light the Fire Within, which I unfortunately keep forgetting to bring. Sorry, Dad Dan. Then Sunday was Demolay State installation, and brunch at Camp Turk. While there, I met up with Tabitha, who retired as state sweetheart that same day, and I got to see the new Statemeister counselor Joe be installed. September was slower, which was welcomed as the start of school was the same month. The third weekend was the Grand Commandery of Knights Templar for their Hawaiian luau dinner. I was greatly helped by a pledge from Rhode Island to sell our goodies for the state charity, who I actually think may have sold more than me. She was the brains behind the whole operation. Then the next morning, I was given the opportunity to speak alongside the other youth groups. I have to admit, I felt pretty cool walking through that sword arch. Lastly, in September was the Southern Area reception. They definitely blew my expectations out of the park. The degree was a game show where I had to help the emoji laughter find her laugh back through emoji riddles. I don't think I would have been able to figure out any of these without my crowd of pledgies helping me. Everyone there did so amazing, I could not be more grateful for everything they did. The first weekend in October was the Northeast Exchange. For anyone who doesn't know, the Northeast Exchange is a weekend sleepover planned by the GWAs and advisors of New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont. It was a labor of love that was so much fun. Over 100 girls and advisors from all of the states were there, and everyone got to meet new people. I am so happy that we were able to keep this tradition going. The next weekend, we traveled to Deemelay's Legion of Honor ceremony to see Rainbow's very own Dad Dan Elliott and Dad Mike Ousterhout receive their LOH. Tabitha and I were even able to give Dad Dan his cord. The next day, we traveled to Utica for the retirement of State Representative Caitlin as she finished her 2 terms, and we saw Angelina take office as State Representative. That next weekend was the OES Grand Chapter installation, where we got to see Right Worshipful Grand Matron Marcia Pratt and Right Worshipful Grand Patron Mark Heitman be installed for their grand year. It was the second time I've been able to be at Grand Chapter, and I'm so happy to have been able to be there. The very next day, we all went to Auburn for the Northern Area initiation, where 8 girls were initiated. Yes, 8. We were having some trouble fitting them into the assembly room, but it was an amazing problem to have. A huge welcome to Chloe, Rachel, Sophie, Krista, Daisy, Charlene, Olivia, and McKenna. The first Friday in November, I attended the OES Green Ulster reception, where both Mom Amy Cott and Mom Suzanne Ousterhout were recognized for their newly appointed grand offices. The next day was the Northern Area Whodunit reception. Everyone sported 1920s costumes as we tried to solve the murder mystery. The Northern Area girls and advisors were an interesting cast of characters who were all suspects. We were even joined by Madison Kay, Grand Confidential Observer from Ohio. The Northern Area did an amazing job, and it was definitely the event of a lifetime. 2 weeks later was New York Rainbow's 100-year anniversary celebration and Grand Cross ceremony. In the afternoon, Mom Amanda and I received our Grand Cross, which was truly a special moment, and even more special that she is the acting mother advisor this weekend. Several girls and advisors brought us through the decades of Rainbow over the past 100 years, while we enjoyed a delicious dinner and danced our hearts out at the dance party. The next weekend was another special weekend as I traveled to Granville, where the Hudson Valley Assembly has moved to. We said hello to new members and advisors and celebrated a new chapter for Rainbow. December and the holiday season gave me a little bit of free time as the events slowed down. However, there were still some fun things I got to do. I was able to travel to Siwassee Assembly for their initiation. Welcome to Rainbow, Lily! After the initiation, we all crashed at Mom Kelly's house and had a big sleepover in their living room. The new year began, and slowly everyone went back to school and work after the holiday season. My first event of the year was the Northern Area installation, where Ariel was installed as worthy advisor. The next weekend, I was out of state for the first time in a while. I traveled with our Grand Rep to Connecticut, Evelyn, to Connecticut for their Grand Representative Day. It was a wonderful event to celebrate their Grand Reps and all of the hard work they do throughout the year. The last event in January was Middletown's installation. Tabitha was installed as worthy advisor for her second term. As February rolled around, so did the Southern Area installation. Katie was installed as worthy advisor for her second term. Later that month was homecoming, which will always be one of my most treasured memories. I got to see Mike and Sully in real life. What's better than that? My final official visit was at a grand banquet for the Royal Archmasons with the other youth group reps that I have the extreme pleasure to travel with throughout this year. And I actually sold out of all of our goodies to benefit the state charity. Unfortunately, Mom Gail wasn't feeling the best at dinner, and my mom got me to snap this pic. Mom Gail, this was all my mom's ideas, so hit her, not me. Early the next morning, we were off to Connecticut for their grand assembly. To round out the year, I was extremely privileged to attend the Spectrum Assembly initiation and preside as worthy advisor, welcoming Selena and Alexandria into Rainbow. A perfect ending to the year. In the interest of brevity, which is kind of funny because this video is very long. I could not name each one of my traveling companions to each of these events, but I thank my drivers and companions that shared this amazing journey. Now I'm going to end the video because I know Alyssa in the East is cringing hearing her own voice in a recording. Thank you!